Thank you so much for being here at day 2 of Trustless Conf. We have talked a lot about trust. Does it creep into Ethereum? Does it align with its values? Is it something that is good or is it hurting us? Our next panel is fully packed with builders who will take on these questions and more. I'll introduce them one by one. Please welcome to the stage Fredrik, Yoav Weiss, Hart Lambur, Bartek, and Peter Watts.
Everyone down? Good? Okay, yeah. Hey everyone. So in this panel, we're going to be examining what trustlessness actually means in cross-chain systems. Basically, specifically, when a user bridge or transact across chains, what entities do they have to trust beyond Ethereum itself? We will compare various optimistic, relayer-based, and proof-based approaches and evaluate whether intermediary-free execution is achievable in practice. But first, I would like everyone to give a very brief introduction about who you are and what you do. Bartek.
So I'm Bartek. I'm a founder of L2Beat. We're kind of like a community watchdog. Right now, mostly for L2s. However, and we are policing these L2s to, first of all, be honest with the community about the trust assumptions, and second of all, progress towards what we believe should be a North Star for everybody, which is a trustless setup. Our goal, and the reason why I'm on this panel is because we want to do the same for the Interop.
Hi, is this on? Hey, Peter from Relay. We do instant cross-chain swaps with a big focus on UX and being extremely fast, extremely cheap on as many chains as possible. Yeah.
Hi, Yoav Weiss from the Ethereum Foundation. So I've been working on security research, account abstraction, and lately I've been building EIL, the Ethereum Interop Layer, which is also an interop solution, focusing on making things trustless while offering great UX and low latency.
And hey guys, I'm Hart Lambur from Across, co-founder of Across, and we build an intent-based cross-chain bridge that also, like Peter, tries to have fast and cheap actions between blockchains with the goal of kind of unifying Ethereum, making it feel like one chain again.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Fredrik. I am part of the protocol security team at the Ethereum Foundation. I also do a bit of the $1 trillion security initiative, and I'm a huge fan of trustlessness. So to level set, I would want each of you to kind of give your definition of what trustlessness is. Can do it in a sentence or two, basically. Not have to be super, but yeah. Peter, would you want to start? Like, when is a cross-chain transaction considered trustless, basically?
Yeah, I think there's many angles to it. So, even just holding there's the level of trust around when you hold a token on an L2, or if you're holding a stable coin, the kind of who has the ability to mint and burn that is some level of trust that you are kind of continuously under. And then when you have kind of intent protocols like the kind of three of us are building, or like effectively cross-chain swaps, there are the actors kind of involved in making that swap happen. But even there's kind of interesting things to consider of, do you need to trust someone to not steal your money? But then there are like other factors of, do you need to trust this intermediary to not kind of grief you and just kind of not do what they were going to say, and maybe even like levels in between of maybe you have a minimum output of what you want and like a concept of slippage, and do you need to trust them to give you the full amount that was possible based on the market rate versus the minimum out? So yeah, I think the thing I would add to the conversation is it's kind of not a binary. There are these different kind of factors on which you care about it, kind of not needing to trust someone. And I think we can all agree not needing to trust someone to not steal your money is pretty important. But then there are these kind of other things which I think the EIL kind of really is like a great solution on not needing to trust anyone for anything. And I think that's kind of part of the conversation of like, is a little bit of trust okay in, for example, kind of will someone do it, or will I just have to, will they grief me or not? And the kind of odds of that happening. So yeah, that's my take.
Well, actually, I think, Yoav, I'm going to give your definition from, I think, the panel yesterday. I think you said, I think this was you. It's like if you can hurt somebody. Here, I like this definition. Something is trustless if you can't hurt the person. I think breaking it down in our space is like, can the user get hurt? Can they have their funds stolen, taken away? And then in some of our designs, there's another aspect of like maybe a more professionalized actor, like a solver. Can they get hurt or reorged or not repaid? But I don't know if I stole your answer.
Yeah, I can elaborate a bit, but yeah, this is exactly what I said. That is, that when you're trusting someone means that basically they can screw you over in some way. So then being trustless is not putting yourself in a position where someone can do this to you. And and this means both the user, so like, does the user need to trust anyone, trust anyone other than the existing trust assumptions? Because we already have some, you trust the underlying networks. If the underlying network is going to rug you, the Interop protocol cannot help you. But being trustless means not adding new trust assumptions beyond the absolute necessary, which is the underlying chains, or in the case of Ethereum, you can trust L1 as well as the L2s because that's where they settle. So to me, that's trustlessness.
So maybe I'll take maybe more technical angle here, because otherwise I will repeat everything. So back in the days, and I've been in this space for like 9 years, we were obsessed in building trustless and permissionless systems. And for me, trustless was always about removing intermediaries, right? We were talking about this intermediation, and we thought that, everything can be done by smart contracts. So I trust code, but I don't trust people, right, that run that code. Turns out that, sometimes I do need certain intermediaries, like relayers, like off-chain actors, in which case I need the system to be set up so it's permissionless, right? So that anyone can actually play that role. And then I have trustless and permissionless, and in such a setup, no one can hurt me, essentially, right? That's the idea. So that's like one side of a spectrum. The opposite side of a spectrum is that, I need to trust an unknown entity, which in traditional world, we would all think that this is a crazy idea. No one would give $100 to a stranger and let that stranger walk away with this money, promising us that, they would come back with some goods, no matter what it is. Like, we don't do that, like it's a common sense. And yet on blockchain, we seem to be doing it all the time, So for me, like, there's trustless and permissionless, which is what we should all build eventually. Then you trust unknown entity. And maybe somewhere in the middle, you have to trust, like, maybe some, I don't know, security council of unknown entities and whatnot. And we go into this complex discussion of reputational-based trust, right? Where you do have to trust someone, however, they have reputation to lose, and you know what they are, and maybe you can sue them, and it's like, it's kind of in between.
Okay, yeah, so I think the intermediary part is a very good and interesting question here. Like, if you think of it from across and relay, what kind of intermediaries do you see? Like, what intermediaries do you have, and what can they basically do?
Yeah, I think there's effectively two layers. You have solvers or relayers, however you want to kind of define them, that are responsible for filling the cross-chain order. And then you have an oracle that is verifying what that happened. And there's kind of various different forms of this. And I think an older version of kind of Relay worked a little bit differently, but the kind of version that we're working towards is actually kind of very similar to other intent protocols where the kind of user is locking their money in the origin, a filler, a solver, a relayer is filling, and then the oracle is kind of verifying that the fill happened correctly. And so they're kind of the two main actors. And yeah, you want to get to a place where you don't need to trust that kind of filler to fill your money, but there is some level of trust in that oracle and the robustness of that oracle. And yeah, so they're kind of like the two main ones.
Can you just ask a quick follow-up question? Like, what is the difference here between V1 and V2 with regards to Relay?
Yeah, so for Relay, we kind of came out with this design where in order to really minimize gas, so like this idea that the kind of classic cross-chain intents is you lock money in escrow, and so the solver doesn't get paid until they prove that they've delivered on the destination, and then they can go get their money. And so the kind of V1 early version of Relay was you could instead have relayers be kind of staked and subject to some sort of slashing, and therefore you could send directly to the relayer, and that would save on gas because you're not having to go through this process of saving it in a contract and then unlocking it. Kind of pretty early, there's a ton of issues with this original design, and we did not even kind of build out some of the slashing pieces, and we migrated to kind of more of a traditional lock-in escrow. But even within that, there's like different ways that you can do that, and we're always trying to push kind of how you can minimize the on-chain footprint and be as kind of low cost and fast as possible. But yeah, that's the primary difference. And so now we look a lot more like kind of all the other protocols, although there is different ways of doing it, kind of like the EIL that maybe doesn't need an oracle at all, except for more of a slashing model.
Okay, I've known Peter a while. I like Peter. I'll just caveat this. I think Peter's a trustworthy guy. He deserves trust. Okay, but I just because there's kind of this elephant in the room, Peter. We'll just like get this all on the table. Like Relay is a centralized and trusted system today. The original version of Relay sends funds directly to the Relay solver, EOA. So you were sending funds to an EOA, and you were hoping they come out on the other side. And I think that is as trusted as it can get, in my opinion, right? In the version you have right now, which I think is, you're sending funds to a contract that is controlled by Relay with an oracle that's controlled by Relay. So I don't think yet anything has changed. Just so we're being like super clear and transparent. And I think that's okay, but we should just be like clear about it.
Yes, these things are work in progress.
Okay, yeah. So that is a decision that you guys made. I think it's strategic, and I actually, to Relay's credit, I do think on their doc site they say this, and you guys actually reference us too. And like I feel like there's a degree of there can always be more transparency, right? But I feel like I don't feel like you are purposefully trying to like pull the wool over someone's eyes here. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate what you guys say about us, and it's like all kind of nice. So that's all cool. But I think Relay is a trusted design today. So Fredrik, to answer your questions, in Across, we did develop this over many years now, and we, for better or for worse, we actually really do try to make this thing be permissionless and trustless, and have done from day one, which was really hard to do 3 years ago in particular. Our idea here is actually not just that like trustless is nice to have, but we actually do think it can make a better product, because I think solver competition is actually ultimately going to give the users better fills and a better experience here. So a little bit goes to Bartek's point here. We talked about intermediaries, where our view is you want to define the rules of the game on the blockchain, and those are like enforced and unbreakable. And then you have open competition amongst these permissionless intermediaries to fill users. So our system is permissionless today, always has been from day one. Anyone can spin up a relayer. occasionally we get attacked on Twitter for saying it's like all our relayer, and that's just not true. I actually looked at the stats today. Our relayer does 14% of the transactions over the last 30 days. So we're not the biggest. There are others that are far bigger. We do some of the higher volume transactions, but even then there's good distribution. So it's permissionless relaying. And we take a lot of effort to have a settlement system that anyone, so the settlement users don't have this trustless settlement system, and any solver, anyone on the network in particular, can disagree with our settlement logic in this optimistic design. Yeah, so I don't know, Fredrik, that answers the question, but those are the kind of intermediaries in our structure.
Yeah, so in Across you have these fillers that from my understanding are there to basically front capital. Do you see them as intermediaries or basically an UX?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should just semantics. Filler, relayer, solver. I'm going to use them all interchangeably. I don't know, Yoav, Peter, agree? Okay. So yes, yeah.
XLP.
Yeah. There's maybe a little difference there, but I will go there. But
Yeah,
these,
the XLP never transacts on your behalf, so it doesn't. So it doesn't act as a solver or relayer. It only transacts on the source chain only to give a voucher. But what I wanted to ask. So since at least in the past when I read the code and document, it seemed that there were additional actors. So it's a slightly more complicated protocol. And like solvers / relayers, fillers are like they are not the only entity, if I recall correctly. Or so, what other entities are there? Like which ones of them are permissioned, or or are all of them permissionless now?
So in terms of filling the user, so just to answer the question, then Fredrik will go back to your answer. In terms of filling the user, it's just a solver filler, fills the user. In terms of running our settlement process, there is an off-chain process to batch all the settlement instructions and propose that optimistically. We call that a proposer function. And then there's a disputer function where if you disagree with that proposal, anyone can dispute it. So those are functions that are in the settlement of repaying solvers and fillers. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So these are all the entities in the system, if I understand correctly. Like all the actors, and they're all permissionless, right? So like you could replace any of them.
The proposer function was permissionless. We've locked it down for our own peace of mind a little bit, but it's something that is updatable by governance, permissionlessly updatable by governance. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit of an in-between thing, just to be totally clear, and it's something that we wanted to make sure that this aspect of our system for safety reasons was safe, but the dispute function has always and will forever be permissionless, so there's no ability to push through of that answer.
How do you prove in the dispute mechanism, since it's permissionless? How do I prove something? Like if the execution, if my intent was not fulfilled as expected, and I want to dispute it, what is the process like, and who gets to? Are there any trusted actors there, or is there a way to prove it trustlessly?
So this goes back to our design from 3 odd years ago. It uses the UMA protocol, the same thing Polymarket uses to prove who won an election. It uses that same design principles, which is all based off of Vitalik's 2014 blog post, Shelling Coin, too. So it's getting in the weeds. I will say that, and Bartek can maybe talk on this too, in the most recent version of Across, we are using succinct ZK proofs in a part of that system. And there's actually a path where we could do that entire proof function with this ZK proof, which would be really cool. Just more work to do on that.
Cool. So you are in the path of like if you want to remove UMA from this protocol and only use succinct, would that work?
It requires a little bit more engineering work, but yeah.
That's excellent.
It's something that that wasn't possible just from ZK proving costs, like maybe even 6 months ago, we're pretty close with the sync team. I think it's pretty cool. And some of the things that we can talk about with the EF is like, I do think like a ZK messaging layer embedded into Ethereum is super valuable. But yeah, but Peter, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, to dispute one transaction, do you have to dispute the whole batch and verify every transaction on every chain and across?
Correct. Yeah.
And can you mention a bit more about the UMA protocol, like how that works, and are there any risks around? From my understanding, there's a token that's being used to kind of vote. Are there any large whales that could like change that decision in a way that maybe it shouldn't be, etc.?
Yeah, we're doing a real technical deep dive on, but if we want to go to the game theory, the UMA protocol, it is my favorite thing to talk about, Fredrik. I'll keep it concise for a second. Shelling point design, the way you think about it is it's at core, there's two layers, and optimistic oracle is what we call it. Yoav, it's not dissimilar from actually the design in your in the EIL, where there's a challenge response game. So somebody proposes something is true, there's a challenge period, it gets accepted as true if nobody disputes it. There's economic consensus around that. If a dispute happens, it gets escalated to this shelling point voting system where token holders with staked tokens vote on what they think is the true outcome here. Token holders that vote with the majority get rewarded. Those that don't get slashed. And the game theory behind this, which I could go super deep on, is that the token holders are incentivized to vote their version of the true outcome here. And that's partially because if the system breaks, their token value is worthless here too. The UMA token distribution is actually shockingly distributed because it's been around for 6+ years. Although on Twitter, we occasionally do get FUD that say that there's like big whales that control the outcome, but I don't actually think there's evidence of that. So, yeah.
Cool, thanks. Going back to Bartek, I wanted to ask about the L2Beat, how you kind of measure this and the topics that we've been discussing now.
Yeah, so actually, I want to kind of address the elephant in the room here, because the way we would see, let's say, like from the external observer, like L2Beat, I would say that the current version of Relay is like I have to trust Peter, right? With Yoav, EIL, it's fully trustless, even though it's not yet in production. So, there's hope, I guess, and Across is somewhere in between with this complicated UMA and whatnot, but this is pretty cool. But let's have a look at not just what are the intermediaries, but which system is actually being used right now by the users. And like we've looked at the chain, and Relay is like amazingly successful protocol. It's integrated everywhere, and a lot of integrators, while giving a choice to the users, hey, you can choose the cheapest and the fastest, it would always go for Relay because it's like super simple. So it seems like either you're trustless, slow, and expensive, or you're like super cheap, fast, and trusted. And end users would almost always go for the latter, as witnessed by the amazing success of a Relay protocol. So my question now is, if we all want to go trustless, as you have guys declared, how do you remove yourself from the market? That's my question. What do you say to Li-Fi, for example, to remove this functionality? They're not using your smart contracts. They are sending money straight to your way, right? And they should, because there's not even an event for us to analyze that. And I'm shocked that that's what they do, but I fear that they do it because it's cheaper and it works, right? How do you remove yourself from the market since you're so successful, Peter?
Yeah, I think it's actually not true that you have to choose. And I think that it's more of like a timing and what we prioritized first. And in terms of prioritized building a product and understanding what people wanted and what were the things that were important, such as the ability to quickly expand to chains and like sensitivity to price and kind of latency, and even what are the biggest pain points for a solver around capital efficiency and rebalancing and all of these things. And so, I think it's definitely correct to put the kind of pressure on us, and we kind of are on this path. And I actually think you can make it trustless without, a dramatic change in the cost, and that's the path that we're on. I think we're not going as far as the EIL in terms of trustlessness. For example, not having to trust that, the relayer you're using, they could just, so our design, for example, and this is like a good point, you choose a specific relayer and you have a relationship with them versus this kind of competition of relayers where anyone could do it. And one of the reasons we do that is it provides a much better experience to kind of have someone who's going to do something for you, so that if they don't do it, well, one example is sometimes things are unfillable. And when they're unfillable, if you have an exclusive relayer that you are working with, they can refund and kind of like undo it extremely quickly versus needing to wait maybe an hour to kind of like for the thing to expire, and then you can go get your money back. And so that is a choice we've made that can really improve the UX in the happy case, which is 99.99% of the time. And then there's the unhappy case where maybe that is worse off, but because we didn't have an open competition for that order, someone else can't step in and fill it. But actually, which do you optimize for, the happy or the unhappy? And if you're building a modern kind of consumer product, you kind of have to optimize for the happy case. And so our model is more of a similar to RPC, which I know some people don't like either, that you're using QuickNode or Alchemy. But the thing is that if you're unhappy with one of them, you can go to another one. And that's our goal, to build out kind of a market that you can choose from, but you are actually choosing. And so then you can also have other levels of trust that I think are okay, for example, around slippage. And so I think we all agree that the ability for a solver relayer to steal your money, we don't want that. But if there's some range of outcomes because they are maybe executing on a DEX for you, and there needs to be some level of trust around whether the solver will give, your minimum output or kind of the market rate, these are kind of tolerable trust to have in the system, where the cost to the relayer, if they abuse that, is kind of loss of future order flow. And so, I think that's how we think about it, which is we are reacting to products that are in the market, that are trying to grow, that are trying to build delightful user experiences, and definitely kind of, I think, got ahead of our skis in a few ways of some of the pieces we wanted to build that aren't fully built yet. But at the same time, we've just kind of come from that angle, and I think just to close it, we can actually, again, going back to what I said at the beginning, because it's a swap, I think, and versus and as soon as that swap is complete, the kind of trust assumptions stop. I think it is actually possible to do it in a very cost-efficient way and have enough trustlessness in the same way, when you get in a plane, the safety is less than in your home, but you're in that plane for a short amount of time, and it's a worthwhile trade-off for the utility of going from A to B. And I think that's how we think about it, which is we want, the right amount of security and trust in order to deliver really good UX, because that's kind of what needed. And then, I think the last thing is allowing the kind of core layer around how tokens are bridges, so whether that's the L2 native bridges or third-party bridges, for that to be as secure as possible, and then allow people to opt into this fast interop layer on top.
Can I respond to that and have a question for Hart as well? Because I want to share my personal experience, which might actually not be that different from other people's experience. So we had a need to move some of our treasuries funds from one chain to another, and we decided to use a cross actually. So we tried with a small amount. It was super fast, super quick, super efficient, and then we moved significant amount, right? And by significant, I'm talking, I don't know, 1 month of salary of, the whole company or something, for us, very significant. And nothing happened. So we were waiting and waiting and waiting, and maybe after half an hour, I thought hey, I need to review the L2B trading, and I need to find out, if they don't, fill our order, I can walk away, right? So I went back to our own assessment, and then I figured, shit, you know, if I'm gonna wait for another hour, I literally thought about DMing you, Hart, about that, because I did not know, you know, and I'm professional, right, you know, and I can DM you as opposed to like people, you know, from the other side of the world. So I wish, you know, at least I should be able to walk away if my order wasn't filled without actually having to DM a relayer or Hart or anyone really, right? You know, that's like the bare minimum for me. And maybe I should have known better because the amount was significant. It's just that, you know, this is what happened literally to us. And I can only say that the dread, the pressure is mounting with time, you know, when you're not on the other side, you're like hanging somewhere in the middle. And this is not a very comfortable experience, right? So I hope that, you know, you guys will work towards, you know, systems where if my order doesn't get filled because, like, let's say it's too big, and you know, I should be able to permissionlessly walk away, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, and you can, right? But yeah, I'm sorry you had a bad experience, right?
No. I think it's actually quite normal, right?
Well, no,
in a way,
it's pretty rare, right? It's a function of the size here too, and this is again going back where because we have permissionless relayers, we have to guess at the capacity of our network at times, and there's times where we get it a little bit wrong, and that's something that we have to be. It's hard to do. It's actually a bit easier if we were the only solver. We would know exactly what's fillable at any given time. But the thing I want to ask Peter, it's like that. It's sort of actually the thing similar to point, Bartek. Like, you know, I can DM you in Slack and be like, hey, Peter, I didn't get my funds. And like, that's all cool. And I do think you're trustworthy and all that kind of stuff too. But from Ethereum's perspective, like, you know, if some other guy, Joe, starts a protocol that's just got you sending money to his EOA, I think you'd be like, yo, guys, you shouldn't use that protocol. Like, don't send money to Joe's EOA. Or I'm curious to get your thoughts. It's just almost like setting a bad precedent that it's okay to start your business with a complete trust relationship? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, the parallel is equivalent to L2s and what was okay, you know, in certain times. Like, well, I would say maybe two things. One is that I'm not worried about it, and like I was saying, I think we can actually achieve a good level of trust and be competitive with that. And that's actually kind of one of our goals, is to work with some of the other products in the market that are doing this kind of more trusted setup and have a solution for them that's like, here is something that allows you to have the same level of cost and speed and all the things you're comfortable with, but you can actually move to a more trusted, because that's the problem, is that if the alternative costs 10 times as much and it's slower, people will fall back to the kind of trusted models. And so yeah, I think you can criticize like the path we took, and you know, it was a very different time 2 years ago. This is kind of like very early in the kind of roll-up roadmap, and also a lot of 7-day bridges, and you know, yeah, very, very different times. And like, I agree with you. And so yeah, the question is like, is, you know, definitely the responsibility is on us, kind of where we're at now, to kind of like raise the bar. You know, what others should do is kind of to them, but I think we're at a point now where we've figured out how to do it very efficiently, and there are kind of nice new designs coming along as well, where that's just kind of less necessary.
I'm curious to know about if you think that the users are aware of the risks today with using the different types of systems. I guess I can ask it to you, Yoav. If this is something that you feel is clear enough as of today with regards to, like was mentioned, that you have higher costs when it comes to using these fully trusted systems versus using something that's just sending from an EUA to another, basically. Obviously, there's a cost difference there, and people may choose the cheapest one because they don't want to pay so much. But I'm curious to understand if you, I guess it's for all you guys, but if you believe that they can understand the potential implications by using a specific service.
Yeah, so I think currently it's not communicated. Like when I use an aggregator or I use some web app that helps me send funds across chains or wallets that integrate these capabilities, I don't feel like they reflect the true risk. And in some cases, like if I want to send $10, then I would go for the fastest and cheapest solution because, I mean, why not? I mean, especially if I don't want to execute a call, which is the focus in EAL, but actually just want to send $10 to someone, then maybe I'm fine. If I want to send $100,000 or $1 million, my considerations are different. And currently, I don't feel like this is reflected. So this is something that I hope L2Bit will change. But then it's, so L2Bit can give us this information, but then we need aggregators and wallets to actually deliver this information to the user. And actually, and if I need to be like, if I need something for a very large amount, I would want something completely trustless. So going back to the situation that Bartek described, so in EAL, for example, once it actually reaches mainnet, which is not yet, but once it's on mainnet, when you request a voucher, you set the expiration time for the request, and you set the fee that the fee gets increased over time to incentivize someone to give it to you. So it's like basically a reverse Dutch auction. But at the end of this auction, at the time that you set, your funds, you can reclaim your funds, and so you know exactly when you're going to get them. Now, given that you want to do something today and EAL is not available today, my personal choice for a very large amount would be a protocol that is not represented here, but is, so there's the train protocol, which is, train is, they basically match you with someone to perform HTLC, to perform an atomic swap. And I would be comfortable doing that with a large amount because it is an atomic swap and there is time lock, so it's, so for particularly large amounts, I would go trustless, and it is possible today, at least for, not for execution, but at least for transfers.
I would respond to your question, Fredrik, that people have no idea at the moment. And it's even worse than that. Most of them don't care at all. And we've been working as L2Bit with two of the major aggregators, being Socket and Li-Fi. And Socket told us that they did display, risks, but that did not change the user's behavior at all. Li-Fi told us that it's pointless and they are not even going to do that because no one cares. So the question is, like, we're stubborn, right? We will expose these risks. The question is, like, will people care? And maybe right now my hope is that maybe institutions will care because they actually manage other people's funds. And if something goes really wrong, and they knew about the risks, they could be sued for gross negligence or something. So maybe this is our hope, but I don't think the individual users will ever care or understand what's going on here, right? They will literally try to do the swap and hope for the best, and in most cases it works, and if it doesn't, then, well, tough luck.
In many ways, would you agree, like every dApp that you use, there's like an implicit trust with that dApp and who's running it, that their DNS is secure, that the call data they're giving you?
Yeah, most. But again, I would say that there's a difference in trusting the Uniswap code or some other version which is like completely permissioned, where EOA can upgrade. And we did have cases where there was a governance attack, and through the upgrade, the money was stolen through the protocols. So these are the risks that we're exposing, right? We don't want EOAs to be able to upgrade your contracts. And we, first and foremost, we want these risks to be properly disclosed, because like half of the protocols will put on their websites that they're trustless and self-custodial. In most cases, this is just not true. When we read the code, but this is how you market your protocols, right? So I think that has to change. Like, we have to be like honest as an industry, and frankly, I don't have like personal issues with protocols like Relay if they say like you have to trust us, and we have reputation to lose if we like screw it. I do have a problem when a protocol says that they self-custodial and trustless. We check and verify, and there's an UI that can upgrade with no notice. So like, what are we talking about, right? That's an issue, right? We need to, I think, be more honest when we communicate these risks to the users. And maybe for like retail users that doesn't matter, but maybe for institutional users that's actually like crucial.
Yeah, look, the only thing I want to add, and I don't want to beat up on Peter, but at all, I do think our industry is supposed to say, like, being custodial is not cool. Like, I do think that is part of what we are supposed to push. And Peter, like, one of the things that I'm genuinely, like, been surprised by is, like, you were the maximal version of send money to my EOA, and people did it, right? And institutions adopted it, too. And it's like, I actually do believe your roadmap. I trust you. Like, I think you guys are, like, quality business. I really do. But it's, like, such a bad precedent,
Yeah, I mean, what is custodial? And like, it's like similar with, again, going back to kind of risk trade-offs and, protocols that have approvals that people have given kind of millions of dollars in approvals to, and that protocol can kind of upgrade. Like a couple of aggregators got hacked and kind of like approvals drained because they were able to kind of deploy new integrations freely. In my mind, that's a lot more custodial and kind of like this resting risk versus traveling risk. So yeah, like I'm not trying to pass blame, but it's just like more like put in context of like, yeah, there's kind of trade-offs and like the path, but it's, yeah, absolutely, and we've also kind of learned along the way what is the optimal way to kind of have the same level of UX that we want and make it trustless. And so yeah, it's been an evolution, and I think it is actually kind of possible to kind of reel things back in the same way that Ethereum has no privacy today, but now that we're ready for it, I don't think it's lost. I think we can reel it back, and similar for L2s. Given a pass for a long time, I think these standards can change, especially as zero knowledge costs go down, we can demand higher standards. And so that's my take of like, there was demand for this product, a lot of kind of pain, a lot of people blocked. We focused on solving that, and people should absolutely put pressure on us to do better, and they're absolutely doing that, and I think it's good, and we will get to a much better place.
Yeah, final question here. What does the end game look like to each of you, basically? So you mentioned that you're trying to do better, etc. What is the end game in your view on this topic?
Yeah, so for us, the end game is yeah, you absolutely do not need to trust around whether your money's going to be stolen, and you can just come and personally take the funds, and if something goes wrong. And even beyond that, I think even the model of solvers, where they have their own capital and you rely on them to fill, is something that we're very interested in how we can solve that, because it's actually quite difficult to run a solver, and I don't think there will ever be that many really high quality solvers with a lot of capital that are also really good at execution. So a big thing we're focused on is how can you unbundle what a solver is and have liquidity that is maybe in pools, and that reduces solving down to just executing transactions across chain, maybe even to the point where you can self-execute on the destination like you can do in the Ethereum Interop Layer. But I guess the last thing is like, it's not the end game for us to have it so trustless that really optimizing for this relayer can't grief you, for example. Like in some ways, we think that's a worthwhile trade-off in order to have the happy case work extremely well, where the unhappy case might be like a little bit more inconvenient. And so that's kind of our end game. Is I think there should be a spectrum of solutions. I think Ethereum should absolutely have a really strong solution, kind of similar to forced inclusion around those cases. And then for us, it's to kind of like meet the necessary bar, and maybe that security scales with the amount, but also just have something that works, like continues to work. And yeah, I think also we want to design something that can compete with a fully trusted solution so that that is a viable, you can kind of be trustless without kind of having that temptation.
I mean, for what it's worth, Peter, I mean, we assigned the highest rating of L2s that in happy case with centralized sequencer, they give you the excellent execution and UI, and unhappy case, you go through the pain of force including transactions via L1, we still give you the highest rating. So if you can provide that, I'll be like promoting your protocol left and right.
What about across?
Yeah, Fredrik, I think I want to add is trustlessness. I want trustlessness to actually be I want to do things that the trustlessness makes this protocol better for the users. Like, it's not just a nice to have, it actually makes the protocol function better. And to me, I think the end game here is we are going to have many chains and many tokens and many stable coins, and there's going to be this ridiculous amount of fragmentation. And even though I would like everything to be an L2 with like a seamless canonical bridge on how to get to it, I don't think that's going to happen. There's going to be other chains. It's just going to be a mess. And I think the intent-based solver network is a beautiful way to create a translation layer between all these chains and all these tokens. I think Peter and I are kind of aligned on that vision. And to me, the end game here is you have a hyper-competitive, permissionless network of solvers that are competing to translate between all those chains and all those tokens. And I actually think that's the most exciting part of where the trustlessness comes from, is how you can have like a 14-year-old kid in their basement be able to do this, including maybe being able to get the capital, like Peter said, to be able to do interesting execution between this. Will it be a 14-year-old kid in the basement doing it at scale? Maybe not. But I do think that if you have that option, there's going to be a lower barrier to entry for more and more innovation in that space. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're out of time, but do you want to say something quick regarding this?
Yeah, my end game is that users don't need to use intermediaries. So self-execution, I think, is key. And the trust assumptions, at least inside the Ethereum ecosystem, where we have a shared source of truth, is only on that. And I should mention, since we are talking about the dispute mechanism, that disputes are, that actually the correct term for it would be fraud-proof, just like with rollups, because there is no dependency, there should not be any dependency on any humans in the process. It only trusts the canonical bridge. So my take is that trust should only be on Ethereum and the underlying networks, the underlying rollups you are using. And it should be self-custodial and self-executing, not trusting an intermediary for anything.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And yeah, give a big round of applause to Peter, Hart, Yoav, and Bartek. Thank you.
Thank you once again to our panelists. Please big a round of applause when they leave the stage. Oh, that was big round of applause. Thank you so much.